Hey everyone, tonight I'm going to tell you a story about a school with a dark secret, a place that's always closed on Fridays. But every Friday night, people say they still hear the school bell and the faint sound of children laughing inside. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and don't listen to this story alone, because once you hear it, In a quiet little town stood an old school called Chandana Middle School No. 3. It looked normal, an aging building, a small garden, and a rusty bell by the teacher's office. But there was one strange rule. Every Friday, the school was completely closed. No students, no teachers, not even the janitor. No one was allowed to enter. When asked why, the principal would only say, "The school needs to rest on Fridays." It sounded ridiculous, but no one ever questioned it. One week, a curious student named Raka decided to find out the truth. He convinced his two friends, Sinta and Bayu, to sneak into the school late Thursday night. At 10 p.m., they arrived at the back gate. It was locked, but they found a broken window near the science lab and climbed in. The air inside was thick and musty. Their flashlight beams swept across the empty classrooms. On one of the blackboards, faint chalk writing caught their eyes. "Don't come on Friday." They wake up, but bulked. "Who's they, Raka?" Raka didn't answer. Before he could, the school bell suddenly rang loud and clear. Ding, 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 3 times. Then silence. But from down the hallway, footsteps began to echo. Slow, dragging footsteps. They hid under a desk. Through the gap, Raka saw a woman in a teacher's uniform walking slowly past. Her clothes were soaked in blood, her eyes pitch black. She stopped in front of the board and whispered, "Why aren't you going home, children?" Bayu nearly screamed, but Sinta covered his mouth. The woman turned her head slightly and started walking toward their hiding spot. Her cold hand reached down beneath the desk. Raka kicked a chair and bolted for the door. They ran through the hall, but every classroom they passed began to open, and students and teachers stepped out. Their faces were pale, uniforms torn, eyes dark and hollow. They started to sing the national anthem in trembling voices, "Indonesia Raya," but the melody was slow, mournful, like a funeral song. When the bell rang again, every single ghostly figure turned toward them. The 3 friends barely made it out through the back fence. Once they crossed the gate, the sound stopped. The next morning, they reported everything to the principal. He just smiled faintly. "You're lucky you escaped before midnight," he said. Back in 1998, an entire class stayed for lessons on a Friday, and they never came out again. Since then, the school has always been closed on Fridays, so the dead won't mistake it for a normal school day. One night, while doing homework, Raka's phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Class starts tomorrow. Don't be late." He froze. The message came at 12 a.m. Friday. He tried calling the number, but it was disconnected. A few seconds later, another message appeared. "You're still our student, Raka." His phone light flickered, and for a split second, he saw his reflection in the screen wearing a school uniform covered in blood. The next day, Raka went to school. Everything looked normal, students laughing, teachers teaching. But when he passed class 9B, his stomach dropped. That was the classroom where they had seen the ghosts. Inside, he saw someone sitting alone at a desk. A girl with long black hair, her face hidden behind it. He peeked through the door window. The girl slowly raised her head. Her face was pale, eyes empty. She smiled and whispered through the glass. "You came back?" Raka stumbled backward, heart pounding. When he looked again, the classroom was empty. That night, Bayu called him in panic. "Bro, something's wrong with Sinta." "What do you mean?" "She's been talking in her sleep, saying she has to go to class tomorrow." Before Raka could reply, he heard the school bell ringing. Through the phone. Ding, ding, ding. Bayu whispered, "It's 2 a.m., Raka. Why can I hear the bell from my room?" Then the call cut off. The next morning, Raka and Bayu went to Sinta's house. Her mother said she left early for extra class, but there were no extra classes on Friday. They ran to school. The gate was locked, but the classroom lights were on. Inside, Sinta sat in her uniform, facing the blackboard. Around her were faint, transparent figures of students. all looking straight ahead. The teacher turned around the same woman from that night. She smiled and said, "Perfect. The class is full again." She pointed at Raka and Bayu. "You too. Take your seats." The door slammed shut behind them. On Monday, only 2 desks in Class 9B were empty. No one talked about it. The principal hung a new sign on the gate. School closed every Thursday and Friday. And at midnight, when the wind blows through the old school hallways, you can still hear the sound of chalk writing on the board and the voice of a woman saying, "Repeat after me, children. Forever is a long time to learn." On Thursday evening, Naya sneaked into the school. The sunset cast long shadows across the hallways. Everything was quiet, too quiet. When she passed Class 9B, she noticed the door was locked. But from inside, she heard faint voices. It sounded like students reciting a lesson. "Repeat after me. Repeat after me." Her blood turned cold. The same sentence, over and over. She leaned closer. The sound stopped. Then slowly the door creaked open by itself. Naya stepped inside. The desks were covered in dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. But on the blackboard, fresh white chalk spelled out, "Lesson 13, the ones who stayed." She felt something brush past her shoulder. When she turned around, every desk was suddenly occupied by pale students all facing the board. Their lips moved silently, their eyes empty. In the front row, Naya saw Raka. He turned his head slowly, smiling faintly. "You're late, Naya." The bell rang. Ding, ding. Each ring made the air colder, heavier. The teacher appeared again, the same woman, with bloodstains on her blouse and chalk in her hand. She looked straight at Naya. "Welcome to class. You shouldn't have come on a Thursday." Before Naya could run, the door slammed shut. The lights flickered and all the ghostly students stood up together, chanting, "Friday is forever. Friday is forever." Their voices grew louder until it felt like the whole building was shaking. Naya screamed, but no sound came out. The next day, the janitor found the classroom door wide open. Inside, there were no students, only one new desk, with a name tag that hadn't been there before. Naya Putri, Class 9B. The principal quietly added a new note to the school rule board. School closed every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And that night, the bell rang again, 3 times. Ding, 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 followed by the faint sound of a girl whispering, "Am I late for class?" Reno arrived on a Thursday afternoon, just before sunset. The sky was gray and the air felt heavy. He climbed over the fence with his camera ready. Inside, everything looked old and dusty until he saw something hanging on the wall near the main hall. It was a class photo. Dozens of students smiling stiffly. At the bottom, written in red ink, Class 9B minus 2025. But when he looked closer, he saw a new face in the photo. Someone holding a camera. Someone who looked exactly like him. Reno blinked in disbelief. He took a photo of the picture, but when he checked his camera screen, the photo he took was different. In his shot, all the students in the picture had turned their heads, staring directly at him. And behind them, a woman in a burned teacher's uniform stood at the blackboard. "Welcome, photographer," a faint voice whispered. The lights flickered. His camera turned on by itself and began clicking nonstop, snapping pictures in every direction. Click, click, click. The sound of the old bell echoed from above. Ding, ding, ding. Reno raised his flashlight toward the tower, but something was wrong. The beam revealed silhouettes of people hanging upside down inside the bell. Their eyes opened as the bell swung. He ran, heart pounding, but every hallway looked the same. The doors, the stairs, all led back to Class 9B. Inside the classroom, the desks were full again. Raka, Sinta, Bayu, Naya, and Myra sat in their places. Ms. Ratna stood in front of them, smiling. "We've been waiting for the school photographer," she said softly. "It's time for the class picture." She raised a small, old-fashioned camera, the same model Reno used. "Everyone, say cheese." A blinding flash filled the room. The next morning, police found Reno's camera lying in the grass near the gate. The memory card was full. Hundreds of photos of the same classroom. In every picture, the students looked closer and closer, until in the last one, Reno himself was standing among them, smiling. On the back of the final photo, someone had written, "Class 9B, complete again." That night, the bell rang 6 times. Ding, 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 ding. Friday morning. Aldo walked under the drizzle, clutching his backpack. When he reached the address, the building looked abandoned, but the gates slowly opened by themselves, as if welcoming him. The sound of a school bell echoed in the distance. Ding, ding, ding. He hesitated. "Hello?" he called. No answer. Inside, the classrooms were neat, dust-free, as if they had just been cleaned for a new semester. He saw a sign on a door, Class 9B, the same one written in the letter. When he stepped in, students were already sitting quietly. They looked pale, tired, but they smiled when they saw him. A girl waved. "You're the new one." Her voice sounded flat, like an echo. Aldo nodded nervously. "Yeah, I guess so." Then the bell rang again. And suddenly, a woman appeared at the teacher's desk. She wore a blackened uniform, her skin pale and cracked. "Welcome to my class," she said. "I'm Miss Livia." Miss Livia smiled kindly, but her eyes were cold and dead. "Today's topic," she said, "is about those who never leave." As she wrote on the board, Aldo felt something strange. Every word she wrote appeared inside his notebook at the same time. When he turned the page, he saw a message written there in dripping ink. "Run while you still can." He looked around. None of the other students moved. They all stared straight ahead, their eyes black, their smiles frozen. Panicking, Aldo ran toward the door, but the windows reflected something horrifying. In his reflection, he was no longer alive. His skin pale, his uniform tattered, and behind him, the entire class was standing. Raka, Sinta, Naya, Myra, Reno, Miss Livia, all smiling. And behind them, Ms. Ratna, the original teacher, her burned face whispering, "Welcome, Aldo. Our class is complete again." Weeks later, the education office received another envelope. Inside was a class photo. The caption read, "Chandana Middle School, Class 9B 2026. The faces were blurry, except for one in the center. A boy smiling nervously. Aldo, transfer student. The photo smelled faintly of smoke. And on the back, a new message appeared overnight. "The bell will ring again next Friday." That night, people swore they heard the bell toll 8 times. Ding, 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 ding. And faintly, through the rain, a boy's voice whispered, "Sorry I'm late, Miss Livia." Gina worked for a small online news outlet. Her editor said, "Just get a photo or a video? Anything that proves the story." She smiled confidently. "It's just an old school, right? What's the worst that could happen?" That Friday, she packed her camera, flashlight, and recorder, and headed to the forest road where the school stood. The sky was heavy with dark clouds. By the time she arrived, it was 6:59 p.m. As soon as she stepped through the gates, the bell rang. Ding, ding, ding. Her flashlight flickered. The hallway lights turned on by themselves, glowing with a faint yellow hue. "Impossible," she whispered. Her recorder picked up faint voices. Children laughing. A teacher calling attendance. She followed the sound. It led to Class 9B. Inside, everything looked brand new. Desks lined up perfectly, books on every table. And in front of the blackboard, a photo hung neatly. Class 9B 2026. Her eyes widened. Aldo's face was in the center, but as she stared longer, his eyes seemed to move. Then she heard a soft voice behind her. "Are you the new student?" Dina turned. A girl in a school uniform stood there, pale, smiling. It was Naya, one of the victims. "No, I'm just a visitor." Naya's smile faded. Visitors aren't allowed on Fridays. Suddenly, the classroom filled with students. Dozens of them, appearing one by one. Their faces blurred, their eyes hollow and dark. At the teacher's desk stood Ms. Livia, holding her attendance book. Everyone is here, she said softly. Except one. Her cold gaze turned to Dina. Please take your seat. Dina's legs trembled. She tried to run, but the floor felt sticky, pulling her shoes down like wet tar. Her camera dropped. The last thing it recorded was Ms. Livia smiling as the lights went out. Saturday morning, police found Dina's car parked outside the old school. The doors were open, headlights still on. Her camera was inside. The final clip showed the empty classroom, then a faint whisper near the mic. Class 9B welcomes you. The last frame, a class photo, now showing 26 students. One more than before. At the bottom, a new name had appeared in red ink. Dina Ramadani, visitor. A young priest, Father Samuel, visited Mr. Aditya in the hospital. The old man's voice was weak, trembling. Father, it wasn't an accident, he whispered. The fire. The Friday curse. I started it. Samuel froze. What do you mean? Mr. Aditya's eyes filled with tears. There was a ritual meant to protect the school, but we used the wrong day. He coughed violently, his heart monitor beeping faster. Friday is not for blessings, he said. It's for binding souls. After the headmaster died, Father Samuel visited the school records office. Inside, behind a rusted metal cabinet, he found an unmarked folder. It was labeled only File 9B. Inside were attendance sheets, letters from parents, and one strange document, a contract written in blood-red ink. In exchange for eternal success, the students of Class 9B shall remain, forever loyal to their teacher. At the bottom was a signature, Livia Y. Bissono, dated March 13, 1998, Friday. The file also contained a cassette tape. Father Samuel brought it home and played it. Static. Then a voice. This is Ms. Livia. The ritual is complete. The children are safe now. Pause. Then the sound of fire crackling. Screams. And through the noise, another voice whispered, not Livia's. You called us. Now we'll teach you. The tape ended with a final bell sound. Ding, ding, ding. That night, Father Samuel laid the documents on his desk. He turned off the light, but when he turned it back on, there was something new. A photograph, one that hadn't been there before. It was a class picture of 9B. Ms. Livia stood at the center, smiling. Next to her, Aldo and Dina, and behind them, Mr. Aditya, the headmaster himself, his eyes black, his smile eternal. The next morning, the priest's church received an envelope. No sender. Inside was a single piece of paper. Father, thank you for finding our file. Please bring it back to school this Friday. Class starts at 7. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and old wood. And when held to the light, words appeared underneath in red ink. Once a teacher, always a student. That night, the priest disappeared. The bell rang 10 times. And the school lights flickered back on. 3 weeks later, a university researcher named Dr. Maya Pratama arrived in town. She specialized in folklore and cursed places. Her brother had been one of the missing students, Raka. Maya didn't believe in ghosts until she found file 9B in the church basement. It was damp, burned, and smelled of ash. Inside was a page titled, Friday Ritual Procedure for Binding Loyalty. It described a ceremony where a teacher offered her blood to ensure her students' eternal unity. But if performed on a Friday, the souls would never leave. They would keep learning forever. That Friday, at exactly 7 p.m., Maya sneaked into the school grounds. She carried candles, salt, and a recorder. She entered the main hall. The walls were covered in soot, but the blackboard looked clean, as if it had been wiped minutes ago. Then she heard it again. Ding, ding, ding. The bell, followed by faint voices reciting attendance. Raka, here. Sinta, here. Dina, here. Her heart pounded. She whispered, Raka, is that you? And then, Maya? She froze. The voice came from behind her. She turned. There he was. Her brother standing in his old uniform. But his skin was pale, and his shadow didn't touch the floor. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "Miss Livia doesn't like visitors." "Maya, please." "Leave before class starts." Then a cold wind swept the hallway. The classroom doors opened by themselves. Inside, the students were already seated, and Miss Livia stood before them, her eyes glowing faintly red. "Welcome back, Maya," she said. "You've grown, but class never ends." Maya dropped the salt in a circle, reciting a verse from the book she found. The walls trembled. The candles burst into blue flame. The students screamed, covering their ears. "You can't free them," Miss Livia shouted. "They belong to me," Maya kept chanting. The photo of Class 9B on the wall began to burn itself, faces melting into smoke. Then Raka stepped forward. Tears rolled down his ghostly face. "Finish it, sis." Maya screamed the last line. The light exploded. The whole building shook, and everything went black. When rescuers arrived the next day, they found Maya unconscious outside the gates, clutching a burned photograph. On it, every face in Class 9B was gone. Only Ms. Livia's silhouette remained, half faded, half smiling. The school was silent that Friday night. For the first time in decades, no bell rang. But just as everyone thought it was over, a new file appeared in the town archive. Class 9B, new semester begins. Homeroom teacher, Dr. Maya Pradama, and below it written in red, those who try to end the lesson must teach it. To recover, Maya returned to the city and resumed her university job. But something felt wrong. Her reflection in the mirror looked slightly delayed. Her mouth moved a second slower. And every Friday morning, she would wake up exactly at 6:59 a.m. with her hands covered in chalk dust. Her students noticed something strange, too. "Boo, Maya, why do you always smell like smoke on Fridays?" She didn't have an answer. One night, she received a strange email. No sender, no subject, only one line of text. Class 9B attendance will resume this Friday, 7 a.m. Attached was a photo, a new classroom. Clean, bright, modern. But on the blackboard, written in perfect handwriting, "Welcome, Dr. Maya." She closed her laptop, heart racing. This can't be happening. But when she looked at the clock, it was already 6:59 a.m., and the bell rang. Ding, ding, ding. She found herself standing in a room that shouldn't exist. The same Chandana Middle School, but everything was new, as if rebuilt overnight. 20 desks, names written neatly on each one. And when the door opened, students began to walk in. They looked normal, alive, but their shadows didn't move. "Good morning, Bumaya," they said together. Her voice trembled. Who are you?" A boy in front smiled politely. "We're the new semester, miss." On his name tag was written, Aldo. Behind him stood Dina, Raka, and all the others, their faces calm, eyes glowing faintly blue. Maya stumbled backward, tears in her eyes. "No, I freed you." Ms. Livia's voice echoed from nowhere. "You did, Maya. You freed them, so they could learn again." The blackboard filled with words by itself. Topic: eternal knowledge. A chalk piece floated, writing one more line in blood-red dust. Once a student, now a teacher. Maya tried to run, but the door locked behind her. The bell rang again. Ding, ding, ding. Her hand moved on its own, writing attendance with trembling fingers. Raka, here. Dina, here. Aldo, here. And then, without realizing it, she said, "Good morning, Class 9B. Let's begin today's lesson." A month later, the Education Ministry received a report. A new private school had opened on the edge of town. Its name, Chandana Academy. When an inspector visited, the school looked empty, except for one classroom. Inside was a woman writing on the board, surrounded by silent students. Her voice was calm, kind. Her name tag read Dr. Maya Pradama, but the inspector's camera caught something else, a reflection in the window, a second figure standing right behind her, Ms. Livia smiling. And as the footage ended, the sound of a bell echoed once more. Ding, 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 12 times. Maya woke up drenched in sweat. She was no longer in her apartment. She stood once again inside the familiar classroom, Class 9B. But this time, the walls were half burned, and outside the windows was nothing but endless fog. At the teacher's desk stood Ms. Livia, smiling like a reflection of her past self. "You've done well, Maya," she said softly. "You kept them learning." Maya clenched her fists. "This isn't teaching. This is prison." Livia tilted her head. "You freed them from death. Isn't that what every teacher wants, to be remembered forever?" 2. The mirror lesson. Livia waved her hand. The blackboard turned into a mirror, showing every face that had ever entered the school. Hundreds of them. They were all trapped, students, teachers, even Father Samuel. Their mouths moved in unison. "Class never ends." Maya stepped forward, holding a single piece of chalk. "The last piece from the ritual book." "Then I'll end it myself," she began writing on the mirror. "Lesson complete." Each letter cracked the glass a little. The reflection screamed. Livia's calm expression twisted into rage. "You can't break what's eternal," Maya shouted back. "Nothing is eternal? Not even you?" 3. The final bell. The bell started ringing again, but this time, every toll shattered part of the room. Ding, the ceiling cracked. Ding, the floor split open. Ding, the students' shadows vanished into light. Livia tried to hold Maya's hand. "If you end this, we all disappear." Maya looked into her eyes, tired, sorrowful, human. "Then maybe that's mercy." She struck the mirror one last time. It shattered. A wave of white light engulfed everything. 4. The silence. When Maya opened her eyes, she was standing in the middle of an empty field. No buildings, no ruins, just quiet wind and grass. A faint school bell echoed once, then stopped. She looked at her hands, clean, no chalk. The curse was gone, but at her feet lay one thing, a small, cracked name tag. "Ms. Livia Webisono, teacher." Maya whispered. "Rest now." The wind carried the last whisper of children's laughter. 5. The new semester. Months later, the town built a new school on that land. They called it Sekala Chandana Baru. It opened on a Monday. Everything was perfect. Until one night, the janitor heard something strange. From an empty classroom came the sound of a chalk writing by itself. When he looked through the door window, the blackboard said, "Attendance, Reka, here. Dina, here. Aldo, here." And underneath, written in bright red dust, "Good morning, Class 9B." Then the bell rang. Just once. Ding. The end. At least until the next Friday. And that's the end of our story, the school that closes on Fridays. I hope you all enjoyed it. And remember, if you ever hear a school bell ringing after dark, make sure it's coming from the real world. Because sometimes the class that never ends is still calling for new students. See you in the next story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling tailies every week. Good night. And may you never hear that bell again.